And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. The Club World Cup is in full swing, and MLS has had a bag of mixed results and performances. All the while, the tournament is receiving relatively mixed reviews online amidst an overly crowded soccer calendar. With so much to talk about the tournament as a whole, we knew we needed some help to cover it. So we're super happy to be joined by Mila and Dylan from the COC Network. How are you guys doing? So happy to have you here.
Good to hear, man. Excited to talk footy. It's all me and Mila do all day, and like I was saying before, it's a therapy session for us. So excited to have you guys hear our therapy takes.
Awesome, yeah. So we're super happy to have you, and of course, I have to be joined by my guy Connor. We are running it back. What are we on 363 now? It's gonna roll back 363.
Yeah,
We're almost at a full
363.
year's worth of episode. You can listen to an episode a day and go for a year. That's crazy. Connor, how you doing, buddy?
I was doing a little bit better before you told me that.
Does it make you feel old? 2020.
Yeah,
We
way
started this
too
thing
old.
5 years ago. Insanity. But we're here, and lots of things have changed since 2020 to now. But the one thing that doesn't change is, we're showing off some really cool scarves. I want to toss it over to our friends from COC first. We'll start with Dylan. Dylan, what do you got?
I got a little bit of a retro pull here. So came out last year. It's missing one star because we're the best. But I got the 5 stars here. Flip it over. We got the retro. It's upside down, but the retro Galaxy logo, along with the old crest. I'm a sucker for the classics, and that's our classic.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say they're missing a scarf because I heard that the last one you won, you cheated. There's no way you could have beat Red Bull in that. No way. So
right.
Mila, what are you rocking?
I got a half and half scarf.
Nice.
So troll me if you might, but I went to the can you guys? It's a little too zoomed in. It's the Atletico Real Madrid game. I went to the first leg of that Champions League match at the Bernabeu, so I picked this up to commemorate that.
Love that. Super, super nice. We were looking for a couple of have and haves, but they didn't exist in the game I was just at. But we'll get to that in a second. Connor, what are you rocking?
I feel like I dogged on them a little bit last time that we were talking about Club World Cup. So, got to show a little respect for the club that's carrying our name right now. A little love for Inter Miami, the only one getting the job done for Major League Soccer and Club World Cup so far.
Yeah, we'll definitely hit on a lot of that because I watched one of the games that I thought gave us a little bit of a step up until they blew it last night, and that is the LAFC Chelsea game that I was at in Atlanta. So I picked up the Club World Cup 2025 scarf with the Atlanta peach on it, which is super cool. So each one of these scarves has a branding for where they played the game. So my friend was in Cincinnati, and they had one like a Cincinnati, and it had maybe the TQL was here. So I got the Atlanta peach, and I'll be in Charlotte on Tuesday to see Bayern and Benfica. So I'm excited to see what that one gets. But that I cannot go to a stadium without picking up another one for the walls. So I figured I'd break out the one that represents the tournament, and it's my first time showing it off. So I'm excited. All right.
Man, that's
well, yeah, no, it's really, really pretty, and I like the design here. So they had another one that was like yellow and black, which looked cool, like visually cooler, but it didn't have this, and I think this is what got me on it. So
Yeah.
definitely enjoyed that game. But that game in particular was a very big talking point online for a host of reasons. But we will get into all of that today. We have so much to cover, but we're going to start with a quick recap of MLS's participation in the tournament. So at this point, when we're recording, each team has played 2 matches, and only, I believe, one team is mathematically eliminated from the tournament, being LAFC after absolutely blowing it against Tunis. However, there is Seattle, who I don't even know if miracle is the right word to describe what they need to happen to move on. They need like 3 of those, and then of course, as Connor mentioned, Miami being kind of the pallbearer for the league as the moment is now. But I want to kind of just start first. How do you all feel about how the league's participants have fared so far? Are we overperforming? Are we underperforming? Is this kind of where we expected to be? And I'll throw it over to you guys first. Where you guys think you're at?
I think Inter Miami is performing well, but if you compare it to some of the competition that LAFC and the Sounders are going up against, it's not as challenging. There are competitors in them, but I do think LAFC has a harder run. I think the Sounders have a harder run, and I've seen them compete in those at times. It's not a full 90 minutes of doing so, but I think they're showing good for what they have in front of them. And obviously with LAFC, it could have been better, but I don't mind seeing them underperform.
Yeah, I think you've got a mixed bag. I think going into the tournament, I thought LAFC had the best opportunity to show what the league could showcase. I think that's, coming from a Galaxy podcast, but a premier market that had a chance to go up against a Chelsea, right? And really benchmark where the league is at in terms of evaluations and where we're actually seeing these things. Funny enough, they've been the lowest on the totem poles of teams that I've watched. And I don't know if that's because their head coach is like halfway out the door, and I don't really know. Maybe just the get in game was enough for them, and this tournament is just like a we're here for fun type of thing. But I've been super impressed with Inter Miami. Obviously, they've just taken care of business, and it's as crappy as this sounds, it's the best possible situation for the MLS that Messi is doing the best, and that we're sitting here and we're talking about Messi potentially going up against another giant later in the competition.
Yeah. Connor, why don't you share your thoughts? 'Cause I know you were adamant that LAFC were just the best of the best in this group, and had the best choice. Isn't that right? Am I remembering that correctly?
Listen, if you could make these outrageous claims if they weren't recorded and published to the public. So, no, I mean, listen, there's been, what is it, 6 games played by MLS sides now, and out of those 6 games, there's one game that you would say the MLS side needed to win, and that was the one game that they did not win. LAFC needed to beat Tunis. I feel like Miami could have lost against Palmeiras and Porto, and I feel like people would be like, okay, that makes sense. Seattle, I mean, we talked about it. They would have been a shock if they even got a single point out of that group. And then LAFC beating Chelsea was unlikely to happen. But Tunis was one that I felt like was like in our ballpark. That was a Major League Soccer level that we could get to, and that was extremely disappointing to see. And I feel like it gave a lot of fuel to the anti-MLS crowd. I mean, granted, I'm sure they kind of like have preconceived notions going into the tournament anyway, but that one hurt. That one hurt to see. I really was hoping for better from them there. But at least, I think Miami's done a little bit better than expected. LAFC's done a little bit worse than expected, and Seattle's been pretty par of the course. So I guess if you average it out, it's been a pretty like standard tournament for MLS sides so far, at least in my opinion.
Yeah, man, and that's exactly where I'm at. I'm looking at this, and what's funny to me is there's such a valley of highs and lows, right? You start off and Miami draws Al Ahly, and you're like, well, that's the one they really needed to win because otherwise they're screwed, right? Seattle is, and Seattle comes out and by all accounts they outplayed Botafogo, right? They were on the ball a lot, they generated more chances, like they couldn't finish and they couldn't put it together, but you're thinking, okay, that's actually a really good showing from Seattle, results aside. Then LAFC go into the Chelsea game, they make it really tough for them to play. And they were a few Denny Bouanga chances away from getting something out of that match. I watched him. He had 2 breakaways that he should have put away, and he didn't. And then Chelsea show their class in tight spaces and quick transitions, and they're beat, right? That's the quick difference there. But you're coming out of that first match week, and you're like, oh, this is actually good. Like we're having a decent showing here. Then match week 2 comes around, and things go even crazier. Miami continues that trend by being the first MLS side to beat a European side in a meaningful match, and you're like, oh, this is great. Then Seattle come within, a point. At one point, they were within striking distance of a very good Atletico Madrid side. Like they were nowhere in the game, by the way. Like not even close. But the scoreline, they were in the game. They made it tough. And then LAFC did that thing against Tunis, right? And now the majority of the narrative is like, oh my God, LAFC and MLS is terrible because look what they can't do against Tunis, right? But overall, I think I'd agree with most of the takes here is that this is not really a bad showing from the league at all, right? A lot of us came in thinking that I know Connor and I spoke about this was like we just hope it wasn't going to be a blowout. We said that like Miami could go all the way to the semifinals, but if Seattle get 7-0 by PSG tomorrow, then that's the only thing anybody's going to talk about. So as long as we keep it close, I think that's respectable. But I could agree with Connor where the idea that this one LAFC thing you needed to win that so you didn't get this narrative on it. And speaking of narrative, just to roll things along here because I think we're all on the same page there. there are these usual online notions of this anti-MLS crowd that none of this even matters because the European teams are just taking this as a preseason warm-up. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this idea because I did see a couple of clips you guys posted, and I'd love to have that conversation here.
In terms of the teams, I do think they care. There's an incentive to win these tournaments. There's incentive to grow their American crowd. But in terms of their fans caring as much, the British fans, the Portuguese, European fans in general, I don't think there's as much interest to fly over here to watch it. And I think that goes into a lot of the scheduling stuff as well. But I'll leave it at that for my take and then pass it to Dylan.
Yeah, no, it's weird. We do the both podcasts where we talk European and then we have to switch to this MLS brain. And so we're kind of playing both sides of the coin. And so from a European's perspective, right, like it does feel like a preseason in the sense of like these are the warm-up period. They're not going to have that preseason later on in the summer. And so they are trying out different tactics, but the only difference is I've never seen a preseason where your starting 11 is starting match week 1 of preseason. And so for the managers like Pep and Enzo Maresca, like these are important minutes to figure out in the squad, like where do we really need to get involved in the transfer market? Usually it's too late. So from that perspective, I think that the teams themselves are taking this super serious and the money behind it just continues that. But on the flip side of that, from a fan's perspective, I couldn't imagine watching a full grueling season, especially if like I was a Chelsea fan. And I just went through this super high of like, we just got Champions League and now I got to come back down to earth to this competition that's not in a country that I'm super familiar with. And
Yeah.
here we are.
Yeah, I for one couldn't imagine being a Chelsea fan. That's just absolutely way outside my. Oh, Connor, sorry, you're still here.
Yeah, you got all the jokes today, huh?
It's all good. Our co-host is also a Chelsea fan, and we like to give him as much
Unfortunately,
grief as we can. Yeah.
I think what you said though about the an ethnic example of what you were saying is that like the City play Al Ain today at 6 p.m. our time. It's great for the American fan base to watch. Should grow the game. Should be a fun thing for everyone here to watch. But 2 a.m. in the UK,
yeah,
to watch Man City play Al Ain, I don't think there's going to be too much interest unless you're like us, who you're a content creator, podcaster. Like there's a reason to watch it. But if you're just a casual fan, like I don't think that's going to do anything. But that again goes back to the scheduling. Is like, who are you trying to appeal to, the US fan base or the global market as a whole?
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. Connor, you got any thoughts on this?
Just really quick, I realized before I said Miami played Palmeiras, I meant LLE. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I think the mention of like fans' perspective versus team perspective is like a really good one here, and I feel like it could be a good segue into one of our other points that's on the list. So I'll save that kind of for the end. But it does feel like the teams care about it more than they have in the past. I mean, like just looking at the team that was fielded by Atletico against Seattle, like if they didn't care, that's a very easy game for them to just heavily rotate. And I don't know if I know enough about Atletico to know if like maybe they did actually like heavily rotate, but it feels like a pretty strong 11 from them out there. I mean, Jan Block's out there, Julian Alvarez is out there. So like it feels like they're going out on the field to try. And considering how much money's on the line, I'm sure that makes a lot of sense for people. But I do feel like from a fan's perspective, like it's just not as strong as like the teams that are like involved in it are like actually, like I don't think there's that same correlation. I think to a lot of the points that you were talking about, where it's just like if you're a fan in Europe, like the time difference just may make it very, very difficult, if not impossible, to actually like watch your team play. I'll take a chance to tie this into tennis. I'm a tennis fan. Watching some of the Grand Slams when they're in different time zones, if it's like the Australian Open or the French Open, it's like impossible to see those games, which kind of sucks. And then you just inevitably watch less of it. But when it's like the US Open, I'll watch a lot more of it because it's a lot more convenient. It's a lot easier. So I really do feel like there's probably a lot of fan lack of interest, and definitely some like issues with maybe even like fan attendance numbers.
So I'm going to take this in a direction with a term that some people will see as very attacking, This is a general overarching term we use. It's called Eurosnob or Eurosnobism. It's not an attack on anybody. So for anybody listening who thinks that they're getting attacked right now, I'm not. But this commentary that nobody's taking it seriously is the crux of Eurosnobism in American soccer, right? Every single one of us here just mentioned Man City, Atletico Madrid, PSG, whatever, all those teams, right? Try telling me that the players from Mamelodi Sundowns, Urawa Red Dragons, or even these big Brazilian clubs, all of which at the time of recording are at the top of their groups, don't care. Try and tell me that the waves of fans that are turning out for teams like Tunis, Wydad, Palmeiras that are filling these stadiums don't care, right? This idea that somebody who will never watch a local game in their life because it's not a top 5 team in a top 5 league and are watching this team play something that isn't the Champions League final and just going, oh, clearly nobody cares about this tournament is the crux of the problem with soccer fanism in America, where if it doesn't relate to teams that they can play on FIFA with 5-star ratings, they don't care. That it blows my mind that people are literally online saying, look at the poor turnout for Chelsea versus LAFC, which is, first off, 25,000 people. It was a very good turnout. The problem was the location of these fans was such that it wasn't on the TV because all of those tickets were absurdly priced. Matt, my brother, Matt, who came to the game with us, tried to get us tickets to those areas. And he was like, yeah, they're like $400 a pop at the time he was trying to. Nobody's paying that. But the 25,000 fans, 15,000 of them were in the second bowl, and the rest of them were behind both goals, right? And then you talk about LAFC, who had to travel for all 3 games. They had no home games in this. So, of course, their support's going to be a little bit lower as well. But this idea that nobody cares because PSG or Chelsea are putting in their youth players at the 75th minute mark is just the perfect description for why American soccer hasn't taken off yet, even though that's a whole separate conversation, because they're only focused on the biggest, greatest, Champions League match. And again, I'm not attacking anybody for this who has this take, but it's something that kind of blows my mind because soccer's bigger than just the big European teams, right? There's so much more out there, and we'll get to touch on this in a little bit, where the idea that the gap is massive and it only matters in Europe is, I think, shrinking, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But from this, I just want to kind of ask you guys: do you guys think that these results are less meaningful because some teams are definitely, and this is where the argument can come in? We're like, oh, they're not taking it seriously. The pace is lower. It feels like they're trying to feel things out. I think that's a fair point, but does that make the results less meaningful?
I'm going to go no. I think that, honestly, it may be that they're trying out different tactics. I don't think that any of the players are taking the games any less seriously. So from just a competitive nature standpoint, everyone's giving 100%. Like, if City had conceded in their last game, I bet you it would have lit Pep to shreds. Like, he would have been lighting every player on the pitch up. Like, it's I think we're just in a weird point where, because of the optics of this tournament, everyone thinks that nobody cares, when I think everyone in their heart wants to care. And the fact that it's backed by FIFA, which is like the most corrupt organization that I can think of the modern times, and the fact that it's in America, which is seen as, capital greedy, like, it's just a bad optical look, and it's put this weird, like, haze lens, like, straight over what we're doing. So no, I think that, honestly, like, the fact that Inter Miami beat Porto is such a good benchmark for where the league is at, that it's important. It's important to know that these teams that are valued at, like, Inter Miami's valued a little higher, but, squad value of 50 million can compete with Porto, who's at, I looked it up, it's 345 million euros. Like, that's their squad value. That wasn't even just the 11. Like, the fact that Inter Miami can go toe to toe with them, but yeah.
I think, yeah, in terms of the MLS and just even some of these Brazilian teams that are making a run for it, Brazilian and Argentine teams, they're able to compete, and I don't see any reason why that should be minimized in any way. And for any, like, even back to the point of maybe the European teams don't care, they're gonna care. They're not gonna like losing to these teams. It's a pride thing. These are still professional soccer players. And to see a team like the Sounders, I just watched the highlights again recently, so it's fresh. But you mentioned Andrew earlier that they couldn't finish, but the chances were there. It was exciting. They could have had it. They created chaos and to make these chances, and all they lacked was that final finish. So in terms of them, in terms of Inter Miami and their actual positioning in the league, I think it's great. And then you see these other smaller teams making a run for it. It's awesome. And the what Dylan was saying about the haze earlier, I think is perfect because at a base, this tournament has been great. It's been a fantastic tournament. I think it's gone above expectations from what anyone thought it was going to be. And there's just this social media commentary that kind of doesn't match the whole narrative as a whole. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I would agree with that. I've seen people who are like, if they played this in Spain, it'd be so much better. Like as if the location changes anything. It's like, yeah, the location probably changes them because you have more people who would be able to travel there. That's pretty much it. And
Mm-hmm.
that goes into a whole crux of other issues. But yeah, I think that the social media side of it is where the echo chamber comes in, where as everybody knows on social media, negativity is amplified because it gets clicks, it gets engagement, it gets anger, right? So when you have somebody who's like, oh, I don't know about this World Cup thing, and they tweet something that says, oh, this is actually pretty good, and they get 3 likes, and then they tweet something like, oh, the Club World Cup is corrupt, and you get 45 likes. It's like, oh, well, I know where I'm going to go. It's just the way it blows up. But, you know, as much fun as it is to go online and troll that Twitter sphere with this idea that one game is a very clear barometer of a whole league success, like, did I absolutely have a tweet ready to say that Aaron Long should get into the World Cup team for the US because he shut down Chelsea? You're damn right I did. Did I delete it at the end? Yeah, because I didn't want to deal with that on the drive home. But I absolutely had it ready. But these results to me, regardless of how some teams are taking it in levels of seriousness, it can be used to measure truthfully maybe one league to the next. But I think more importantly, it speaks to the gap in quality between the lesser leagues and the top leagues, right? There is a non insignificant number of people who live in the world where they think or maybe thought that any Euro team can put out their reserve team and walk over any team that isn't from the top five without breaking a sweat. Like that is a legitimate conversation I see multiple people have all the time in the terrible comment sections of most tweets. Outside of our friends in Auckland, every team has made this game close. They're very tightly contested, and maybe Al Ain from UAE, I think, is the other one who kind of got beat up pretty good by Juventus. But everything else has been very, very contested, right? Whether they were playing at 100% or not, they're very contested, right? Sundowns put 3 past Dortmund. Botafogo topped PSG. Flamengo beat Chelsea. Monterrey tied Inter Milan, who was in the UEFA Champions League final. The tournament, for all the negative social media spin that it has, it's shown that the gap is not as big as social media makes it seem, regardless of how they're taking it. I think the way I put it is it's not miles apart, it's meters apart. And I think that's a really good thing to have personally. But Connor, you have anything on that?
Yeah, I mean, I love the way that you phrased it before, Mila, where it was, these guys are professionals. They're gonna go out there and they're gonna play to win. They're not gonna go out there to trot around, collect a paycheck. Like, even if they're in a scenario where, maybe this game for Real Madrid doesn't necessarily mean like the most to the Real Madrid fans back in Spain, for a lot of people in the States or maybe even people that are in countries close to the States that can make the trip out. This might be like your one and only chance to see Madrid play a competitive game because I feel like a lot of these bigger sides that come over here will be in like a lot of preseason games, and it's like, all right, now I get to see Real Madrid or Man City play, but I'm watching like their B and C team out here, and they're kind of in preseason mode. Erling Haaland's on vacation in Mykonos right now, so he's not on this trip right now. So it's like now if I'm a Real Madrid fan, I get to like this is a chance for me to watch like Vinicius play for the first time. So it's like if I'm a player on the field and I'm a professional, like I'm gonna try out there. Like this may be a chance for these people to see me play competitively like once in their entire lives. Like if you're a professional player, you're gonna take that seriously. That doesn't necessarily mean like, oh, I have to run out there as if this is like game 38 in the season and like, Champions League is on the line if we drop points here. But it could just be, choosing the right moments to like really take it to that level, not necessarily have that level at the entirety of the game, or just like making sure that you're staying focused throughout the game, like that same level of focus that you would have in a a regular game during the Premier League season. So, I do feel like the teams care, even if like a stat came out later on and it was like, oh, the pace of play in the Club World Cup was down compared to like the pace of play for all the other like top five leagues during their like regular seasons, which is totally fair for these players too. Like they play 60, 50, 60 games a year. God forbid they have a couple games where the pace slows down a little bit so their hamstrings don't all explode on the field. So I don't, I personally don't feel like there's any situation where you could be like, oh, the players don't care and it's showing on the field.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, I think there's a big, loud minority that is trying to make this sound like it is the end of the world that it exists. When in reality, I think it's going to stick around for a while, and they are going to have to tweak it. And we're going to get to that in a second. But before we do that, I do want to touch on this commentary on attendance. Because unfortunately with this tournament, because of how many people don't want it to exist, because they are creatures of habit and don't like change or anything new, less talk has been made about the play on the pitch online, and most of it has been around outside commentary, one of those being attendance. And of course, this ties into kickoff times and locations. And I know you guys had a little bit to say on this already, but did want to get your thoughts on this narrative around the tournament so far for attendance, rather.
Some of these games are in people's backyards, but they're right smack in the middle of a work day
Mm-hmm.
at noon or 3 p.m. or even 6 p.m. and you have to get up with LA traffic. It's not going to happen. So as much as people may want to be attending these, I'm sure that's happening throughout the whole tournament across the states.
Yeah.
That part is to appeal to the global audience in my eyes. They want viewers, they want just people watching it on the television. Cool. Fine. On the other hand though, then you're going to see these complaints about empty stadiums for some of these. And I'm sure multiple people would love to go see these, and the timing sucks. So that's one reason. Two, like we've all talked about it before, the pricing is ridiculous. So for some of these to one have to make the time to go out to see it, to pay the ridiculous prices, and then maybe have to travel as well, it adds up. And I think that's hard for just anyone to do. So that I think is the second reason for attendance being low in some of these games. But obviously, there's been exceptions. We've seen good attendance from the Red Dragons fans. We saw, like, I think you mentioned the Wydad fans against Man City. They were in attendance. That stadium was pretty packed, and it's not even one of the most attended games. PSG Atletico, a lot of people in that stadium. It wasn't even sold out until like the day before, I think, and they managed to fill that. So on the convenient timed games, people will show. On the ones with big pull, they will show. Even teams that have less pull but bit larger fan bases, more diehard fan bases, they'll show. They just need to make it accessible to us for people to fill the seats, basically.
Which is such an interesting thing because I read an athletic article that came out today that was like the whole reason that this is such a big tournament is because they can grow their American audience, right? You have these
Mm-hmm.
people showing up, but then you're putting the game at 12 o'clock on a Tuesday. How is that going to work? Like not everybody's got time to take off. So it's that's such an interesting thought process there. But Dill, what do you think?
No, this structurally in its essence comes down to just business decisions made by the US Federation and FIFA. That's what this all is. I mean, you go look at any US Federation, like the game tonight, that stadium will be empty.
Oh
It
yeah,
will be empty. And that's been a running issue with the one team in this country that you can always get people to support your country, right? You go and look at other places, it's kind of run of the mill. You have people in the stands. But going back to this, FIFA made a deal with DAZN for $1 billion. You think DAZN is going to sit here and tell you they don't want a global audience on their platform for this? Like, that's ludicrous. And I wouldn't expect that from a business decision for DAZN to be like, yeah, let's put this at 7 so that our UK audience can't watch this. So it's supposed to be in its raw form a American competition where you can get this side of the world interested in the sport because it's still growing and it's the biggest market in the world. But you've done a lot of pulling back on that by creating deals with specific people for the amount of money where it's always going to become global again. And so if the whole point of this competition was to, hey, let's make it American based, let's get our American audience interested, they should have played these only in soccer specific stadiums. Shouldn't have played it in Atlanta, because I only know one team that can fill out a soccer stadium in Atlanta, and it's Atlanta United. But outside of that, like, you're just not going to get viewership there. I mean, could you imagine if they had just played this game in like LAFC stadium? Like that Chelsea LAFC game, that's sold out if it's played in LA.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, you pigeonholed yourself in these giant, massive stadiums where 25,000 is a sellout somewhere else, but on TV in Atlanta, it looks like crap. Like,
yeah. The only pass I'll give on LAFC is because they came in late. I think the logistics were tied there. That's the only reason why I sat there. And even then, they still had a solid 1,000 people in their 3252 coming down. It felt like 1,000. They were nice and loud, but I watched a whole bunch of them over there, and it was a good turnout for what it was, right? But I would agree with you 100% where you are putting these in stadiums you expected to be packed out because you're playing, when you have a Man United versus Liverpool preseason summer friendly, it used to sell out because you played it at 7 p.m. on a Saturday. Now you're putting the same game in the same stadium at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, and it's like, where's all the people? Connor, your thoughts?
So I've actually got an anecdote I'll go for here. I've got some buddies who are from Brazil. They're Palmeiras fans.
This is already a lie. Connor has no friends.
All right. I'll send you the screenshots. You can post it in when you do the edit.
Love it.
So they're Palmeiras fans, and they obviously this is an opportunity for them to see Palmeiras live. I have a feeling they've probably gone to Brazil and seen them, but obviously like they're here in the States now. It's a great opportunity for them to be able to just more conveniently go see them. They were at MetLife. Like, talk about convenient. It's right around where we are. And the only reason that they were even able to consider going to that game is because it was a federal holiday. Otherwise, it was, as we were talking about before, a 12 o'clock game on a Thursday. How are you going to get people to come out for a 12 o'clock game in the middle of the week unless it just happens to be on a federal holiday? And then they still, to even like tie it into the other port we were talking about, they still didn't end up going to the game because the ticket prices were just ridiculous. And it's not even like, it's not to a point where it's like, oh, this is completely unaffordable. Like, yeah, they have the money to be able to buy it, but it was just like, I guess probably based on principle of like where the seats are and like how much the seat should be worth versus how much they would be paying. It was just ridiculous to be able to do that. So it's like, I'd rather just go stay at home and watch it versus have to go all the way out over to New Jersey, pay a ton of money and sit in the nosebleeds at MetLife to go watch my team play. If you really wanted to boost fan attendance, you got to do better with the scheduling and then do a lot better with the pricing. Like, I understand there's a lot of prize money and maybe this is their way to try to recoup some of that money, but clearly it's not working because there's not enough people showing up to at least make up those numbers.
So just a note on that, because I don't necessarily believe that is a overarching true blanket statement. Because if I follow a guy, his name's Simon Evans on Twitter, and he is posting the attendance for every Club World Cup game reported. Now, asterisk reported, right? We know how America does their attendance. I'm not saying that every stadium hit these numbers, but I mean, I'm looking at 30,000, 40,000, 60,000, 80,000, 20,000, 55,000, 34,000, 40,000. Like, these games are selling. Whether the people are getting to show up or not, I can't speak to, but these games are selling. To say that there isn't enough money coming back in, I don't know if that's necessarily true. The problem that I have, again, comes to narrative, right? I don't anticipate 40,000 people rolling out every single day at 12 p.m. to show things up, especially for games like Ulsan versus Sundowns, which I believe is the lowest report on the list at like 4,000. Those teams don't have those teams don't have the narrative or the brand pull to get people to show up to that, right? That's fine. But this narrative, I believe, is just a little bit skewed. And again, I'm going to go back to the LAFC Chelsea game that I was physically present for. And I told you about what the stadium looked like. I believe it was MLS Eli who posted this, where he basically took a picture of the start of the game when they brought out the Club World Cup crests and were doing the attendance, and basically said, where are all the people? And I can physically see where he took the picture, cropped out the middle bowl where everybody else is, and both sides cut out where the other two people were, and just took a picture of the empty stadium where I told you, or I mentioned earlier, that the tickets were like $400. He's like, "Where are all the people?" And I literally replied to him with pictures, and I go, "We're all here." And he goes, "Oh, that's fair enough. Have fun." I'm like, "So you clearly took this picture, intentionally cut it so that you could get interactions with these people who are on Twitter, so you can get extra people to follow you, and then just to say that, oh, the World Cup is a flop." It's such a silly thing. Now, I completely agree with everybody that this is not something where you can't take every single game and play them at 7 p.m. There are 4 games a night. You've got a massive country. Play them all at 7 p.m. Pack the stadium. That's not a hard thing to do, right? But I think to claim that this is a massive flop, I think is very not true. And that leads me to my kind of last question here: is it's not a flop, at least in my opinion. And I think that most people can agree that it's been, at the very least, it's been okay. But it, of course, like many tournaments in their first year, it needs to be improved in some sort of ways. If you had to pick one thing right now that you need to fix going forward, what is it?
It's hard to choose between scheduling or pricing.
Sure.
But in the eyes of the average fan, I think it'd probably be the scheduling. Even if you don't want to put all the games at 7 p.m. so that you can get more viewers, like you could spread it out a little. People will stay up a little later to go see one of the best teams in the world, or what their team from across the world playing right in front of them. So I think they failed in the sense that we could have been garnering a lot more casual fans at these things. But at the moment, it's just really the diehard people, the diehard fans that can make it out to these games, or that it will take the sacrifice to make it out to these games. So for me, it's got to be the scheduling.
Yeah, I need like a half second more to actually think and digest that question because it's a good one. And so I
Yeah, no
want
problem.
Connor to go first if that's possible, and then
Connor,
I'll come on.
Connor, you're on the spot, buddy.
I don't have a solution to mine, and
Shocker.
mine might be a bit of a weird one. I don't know. I feel like I have to kind of go through the full tournament first before I can like say for certain if this will be a thing. But I feel like for me, I almost feel like I'd have a little bit of club football fatigue because you're going through an entire season starting from April to May. And now, normally, where you'd be getting a couple months off and you kind of like get to reset, you watch a little bit of international, and you get to go through the summer of like building up the excitement of like, oh, rumored players, who's joining, like start talking about like, oh, how are we going to line up with these new people going into the next season? And then when you finally come around to it, you were kind of able to build up all this excitement and hype again going into August and carry that throughout the season. And now you're talking about if your team goes all the way to the final, you're going all the way through July 13th. Basically meaning you've got like 1 month before your team starts playing again. I feel like there's just some fatigue at that point. Like even just as a fan of like, I could use a little bit of time to just like, focus on the transfers the team's going through, just kind of talking about tactics and the direction of the team to get like to kind of build up the excitement again and then like go into the new season as opposed to just like them playing all year round at this point and it's just like nonstop like just watching like I mean for a lot of people I'm sure it is going to be exciting and like for the people that are really really dedicated to watching club teams play they're probably going to love it. I just feel like for a general fan they might have a little bit of fatigue of just watching their team play the entire year and not having any break to either watch another sport or just be able to like just take a little bit of time to like rebuild your I don't know, your theories, your excitement, your tactics again for going into the next season for your team.
Okay, I got to give an answer. Selfishly, I'm gonna say I think it's just the stadium size. I'm actually okay with paying a higher price ticket if I'm closer to the players that I want to see play, right? Like instead of seeing Cole Palmer in Atlanta, right? Like I was never going to make that trip. And it's funny, we talked about it because we thought in our head that the Galaxy were going to be in the tournament. And so we thought like, oh, maybe that's the game that we'll go to. Selfishly, I'd pay more money to see Cole Palmer in a 20,000 person stadium. And I'd pay a little more to make that happen than sitting in the nosebleeds watching him play there without like the guarantee that I'd actually be able to see him, if that makes sense. Like from a selfish I want to see the best players as close as possible. Like when I went to Europe this summer, I saw United play. I was 10 rows back and it was incredible. Like I got to see my favorite player ever right in front of my eyes for 70 minutes. Like I won't be able to probably do that many times in my lifetime. So if I was able to see them a little closer, I honestly think that on viewership wise, you'll get the same kind of online presence, but on TV, it'll look more full. You'll get passionate fans there. You probably are going to price out people, but unfortunately, that's just the U.S. Like I have a hard time. I always go back and forth because the U.S. in soccer it's a money grab, but it's also just America. Like we're just kind of fighting between that evil all the time, and so consumer greed in me just says put it in a smaller stadium. Let me be closer to the action, and let me see an Erling Haaland at 15 yards away instead of 100 yards away.
Yeah, I mean, you're telling me like if you took Wydad versus City, right? Who I'm just looking up here, and it was 37,000 in Philly, which
Mhm.
was in I believe it was the football stadium. They did that.
Yep.
They don't play that in Chester. You saying you take that out and you pack out a bunch of City fans and take all that entire Wydad and spread them across half the stadium. That'd be elite. I completely agree with you there. That'd be wonderful. But like you mentioned, it doesn't, you're going to have to then fight the narrative of, oh, everything's a cash grab because look how expensive these tickets are. So you're going to lose either way if you're FIFA. For me, first off, I love the tournament. I like the idea. I think it's unique, it's different, it's fun. But FIFA screwed it up. Right? Everything you guys have said has been very spot on. But I was thinking about the other day, which is why I've included this in our chat here. But outside of the time changes, the ticket prices, all that in the stadiums, all these things that are absolutely needed, I think it needs a full summer to itself. Right now, we're competing with MLS, USL's still on, the Gold Cup's on. I've watched two Gold Cup games. I usually have the Gold Cup on all the time, but I can't watch it all because it's just all over top of each other. But I think this is a really good way to build hype for the actual World Cup, right? To see how this tournament works, but it can't fight for attention with anything. So the way I would do it is, first off, we mentioned this last time. Next year, the Club World Cup's going back to 6 teams, right? Just the winners of all the federations are going to go play each other, just like it did last year and the year before. This is supposed to be like an every 4 year thing. So in 2029, they're going to do this big 32 team thing again. Scrap the other ones. Scrap the smaller ones. I don't care about those. Nobody's going to watch them. Don't worry about them. Get rid of them. Don't need them. Make this the big one that you're going for. Every 4 years, you have to win your Champions League to get into this tournament. That's it. Period. I think that is, first off, a great start. You have a reason to win whatever you're doing outside of just the money, right? Then mix the rotation around in terms of the international calendar, right? So 1 year, make it the Club World Cup. World Cup comes the year after that. Then do Gold Cup, Copa America, right? The year after that. Then do Nations League or whatever your equivalent is for what that is, right? Every 4 years, you have one tournament. I don't think you need Nations League and Gold Cup to be every 2 years. I think it's excessive. It's not needed. Nobody really cares. Get rid of it, make it 4 years, and just rotate it one by one by one. Save on the schedule congestion in the consumer field where you don't have to watch everything all at once. Give each tournament one summer to itself and market it, right? Show it that this is the thing you need to watch this year. At the end of the day, I don't think it's going away. I think this has a big future if FIFA can figure it out. Because even though the Euro teams may not care for it or their fans might not care for it, this is such a good opportunity for clubs outside of Europe to compete on the biggest stage with these teams. I mean, look at what that Auckland City story was, right? This dude is about to get fired from his job because he wanted to go play against Manuel Neuer. And you know what? You're valid for that, right? Absolutely. It's not about Bayern here. It's not. But it's great for the ecosystem. The fans care, the teams care, the players for the most part are caring. They just need to make a few tweaks and I think it really takes off personally.
I think
Yeah.
the one thing I want to say on your point there
Yep.
is I would want to at least like maybe have a better understanding or change to like how they determine who qualifies because I feel like if you do it every 4 years, like are you just going based off of who qualifies recently? Are you gonna like
Mm-hmm.
take into account everybody that's won it in those 4 years during that time? Because like I'm looking like I know Major League Soccer is probably a little bit of an exception here, but it's insane how much a team can change within 2 years. I mean,
Yep.
I'm sure Dylan sees that firsthand with the Galaxy. It took 1 year and the team completely 180'd, right? It's like now picture, we have three teams representing MLS in Club World Cup, and if Galaxy win it 3 years ago and now all of a sudden they couldn't afford to keep any of their players anymore, the team is like maybe I won't use the Galaxy. Sorry, that feels like beating up a little bit too much. I'll use San Jose. I'm sure there's not too many people listening from San Jose. Plus, they're the Galaxy rival. So like imagine San Jose wins. I don't know. Let's just say by miracle they win CONCACAF Champions League because Bruce is in charge. Anything's possible with him. And now 3 years later, they're representing Major League Soccer in Club World Cup. It's like this team could be garbage not by now, 3 years later. It's like, is this who we really want, like basically representing us at the Club World Cup? Is San Jose as one of the three Major League Soccer teams because they won it 4 years ago? Like when like in the first window of this qualifying period for Club World Cup?
I definitely see where you're coming from with that. I just think it gets into a dangerous line where you get a situation where the Inter Miamis or whoever has the biggest pull in the league is just going to get that spot. And that can get very corrupt in a way, especially for a league that boasts its parity throughout the whole thing. I think it'd be tough to have. I think there would be favoritism in that sense if that were the case.
Don Garber, favoritism? No, surely not. No, Connor, it's a great point, Connor. And one of the ways I think we can fix that is half of these teams that qualified by being the fourth highest rated UEFA coefficient, whatever they're doing. Just stick to that then, right? On the day that they are picking by this date for the gold or for the Club World Cup in 2029, you need to be in the top 4, 8, 12, however many your federation gets. You need to be in that top thing and you go. Right. So that way you have kind of like an average of where you're at. I think that's an easy way to fix it. But it's a great point, right? Yeah, I definitely don't want to see Atlanta United win something, then do what they're doing now and turn into, the laughing stock of the league like they definitely would be. It's a great
Listen,
point.
if I'm gonna if listen, I'll self-deprecate here. Like Chelsea has no business being in here over like a Liverpool. Like Liverpool is clearly better than Chelsea is right now. Like if you're talking about you want the best teams in the Club World Cup, it should be Liverpool there over Chelsea. But Chelsea got it because they won the Champions League like a few years ago. Like it's clearly a completely different Chelsea team than the one that won the Champions League a few years ago. So
Yeah.
I think the coefficient thing is a good suggestion to kind of like fix that issue. Gives you like the best over a period of time.
Yeah, it's a great point, Connor. Really, really, really good way. And I think it's a good place to end it right there because I think everybody's happy, nobody's yelling at each other, and I haven't gotten pissed off at Connor, so that's a good way to end it.
That's a win.
It is a win. We got through a whole episode without me having to tell you that you're crazy. Listen, Dylan, Mila, thanks so much for hopping on with this conversation. I think it was a lot more fun this way than if it was just me and Connor. So really appreciate you hopping on. Please take a little bit of time, tell people where to find you.
Dylan,
Yeah.
go for it.
I'll do it. Yeah, we're COC Network, so you can find us on YouTube, any social media, X, TikTok, Instagram. You want to hear Premier League? That's Clash of Clubs. That's me, Mila, and our buddy Grant. We all hate each other's clubs, and it's a lot of fun, if you can imagine. And then if you want to hear me crash out like every other week at this point, with some slight optimism with Mila and Andrew and Dari, that's our Clash of Cosmos, and that's where we talk LA Galaxy. So if you love the LA Galaxy, come follow us there. If you hate the LA Galaxy, come hate on us there. We'll take all the people that we can. But yeah, COC Network, that's where to find us. We appreciate you guys having us on and doing this. This is great. This was awesome.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Tons and tons of fun. We love meeting new friends and getting to do some of this stuff. So thanks so much for hopping on again. And if you guys are new here, we are the Designated Players. We are an MLS specific podcast. We do past, present, and future. So we'll talk MLS news at the beginning of the week. We'll hit you with an MLS history story in the middle, and we do some predictions on the weekend. It's a whole bunch of fun, and it's really just me yelling at Connor for 90 minutes a week. So come on over and be a part of that with us because we love chatting with you guys and having a good time. You can find us on any social media platform if you search the Designated Players. So thanks so much for listening. We hope everybody enjoyed it, and we'll see you all next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.